The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune as Elena Vasquez made her way through the crowded hallway of Millbrook High School. 3 weeks had passed since her enrollment, and she still felt like an intruder in someone else's carefully constructed world. Her worn sneakers, deliberately chosen to avoid attention, made barely a whisper against the polished linoleum floors that reflected the harsh overhead lighting. She moved between clusters of students with practiced invisibility, a skill her father had taught her long before she understood its necessity. The morning had started like any other. Eleanor had arrived precisely 15 minutes before first bell, enough time to observe patterns without appearing conspicuous. She catalogued faces, memorized schedules, and noted the social hierarchies that governed teenage life with the same brutal efficiency as any military command structure. The popular kids occupied the central corridor like conquistadors claiming territory. The athletes flanked the eastern wing near the gymnasium. The academics clustered near the library, and the artists haunted the spaces between, existing in a liminal state of semi-acceptance. Tyler Bennett materialized in her path with the sudden inevitability of a storm system. His varsity jacket, emblazoned with championship patches from 3 consecutive years of football victories, caught the harsh fluorescent light like armor. Behind him, his followers arranged themselves in a formation that spoke of countless rehearsals. Drake Morrison stood to his right, knuckles scarred from fights that never made it into official reports. Brad Chen occupied the left flank, his photographer's eye already calculating angles. 3 more lettermen completed the semicircle, effectively cutting off any escape route. "Well, well," Tyler drawled, his voice carrying that particular frequency of cruelty that only teenagers seemed capable of producing. Each word dripped with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. "Look who we have here. The mystery girl who thinks she can just slide into our school without anyone noticing." Elena's internal threat assessment activated automatically. Her father, Colonel Robert Vasquez, had spent 17 years embedding these responses into her muscle memory. Distance to nearest exit, 12 feet. Number of potential hostiles, 6. Witnesses, approximately 30 students, most actively avoiding eye contact. Security camera placement, 1 unit mounted above locker bank 12, currently operational based on the red LED indicator. Tyler stepped closer, invading her personal space with calculated precision. His cologne, an expensive brand that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, mixed with the underlying scent of arrogance and barely contained violence. "You know, new girl, there are certain traditions here at Millbrook, certain ways things work. New students usually understand they need to show proper respect to those of us who've been here longer." His hand moved toward her shoulder in what would appear to observers as a casual, even friendly gesture. But Elena recognized the grip strength in his fingers, the way his thumb positioned itself for maximum pressure on the nerve cluster near her clavicle. It was a bully's trick, designed to cause pain while maintaining plausible deniability. Her response bypassed conscious thought entirely. 17 years of training crystallized into 3 seconds of fluid motion. Elena's left hand shot up, catching Tyler's wrist at the precise angle that locked his joints. Her body pivoted, using his forward momentum against him, while her right hand found the pressure point at his elbow. The quarterback, who had never lost a tackle, suddenly found himself pressed face first against the cold metal lockers, his arms secured behind his back in a position that threatened dislocation if he struggled. The hallway fell into absolute silence. Even the omnipresent fluorescent hum seemed to pause in recognition of what had just occurred. 30 witnesses stood frozen, their phones half raised to capture whatever humiliation Tyler had planned for the new girl, now recording something entirely different. Elena's training evaporated as quickly as it had emerged. She released Tyler immediately, stumbling backward with eyes wide in genuine horror at what she had done. "I'm sorry," she gasped, her carefully maintained cover persona reasserting itself. "I didn't mean to. I thought you were going to—" But Tyler Bennett's expression had already undergone a transformation more concerning than any physical threat. The shock melted into something calculating and infinitely more dangerous. His humiliation, witnessed by dozens of students who would spread the story throughout Millbrook High before second period, would demand retribution. Eleanor had just painted a target on her back that would follow her through every remaining day of senior year. Drake Morrison helped Tyler straighten his jacket, whispering something that made the quarterback's eyes narrow with renewed purpose. Brad Chen lowered his phone, having captured the entire incident from multiple angles. The other athletes formed a protective barrier around their leader, but the damage was already done. Tyler Bennett, untouchable golden boy of Millbrook High, had been taken down by a girl who weighed barely 120 pounds. "This isn't over," Tyler said, his voice low enough that only Elena could hear. "You have no idea what you just started." The security camera above locker bank 12 had indeed captured everything. In the administrative office 3 floors up, someone was already reviewing the footage, rewinding the clip to study Elena's defensive maneuver with professional interest. The movement displayed training that civilian teenagers shouldn't possess. Techniques that belonged in military close quarters, combat manuals rather than high school hallways. Vice Principal Karen Hartford leaned closer to her monitor, studying the biomechanics of Elena's response. She reached for her secure phone, entering a number she had memorized years ago. "We have confirmation," she said when the call connected. "The Vasquez girl just revealed her training. The timeline is accelerating." Elena pushed through the double doors leading to the courtyard, her heart pounding against her ribs with enough force to crack bone. September air hit her heated face like a slap of reality. 17 years of her father's careful instruction, 17 years of maintaining perfect operational security, and she had blown her cover in less than a month. The muscle memory that had saved her life in 3 different countries couldn't distinguish between real threats and teenage posturing. She found a bench partially hidden behind overgrown juniper bushes and collapsed onto it, running through the encounter in her mind. Every instinct screamed at her to call her father, to request immediate extraction before the situation escalated. But that would mean admitting failure, acknowledging that she couldn't handle a simple reconnaissance mission at a suburban high school. Impressive technique. The voice came from directly behind her, which should have been impossible. Elena had chosen this spot specifically because it prevented approach from that angle. She spun around to find Lucas Kane leaning against the brick wall, having somehow materialized without triggering any of her spatial awareness. His appearance suggested careful cultivation rather than natural accident. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that seemed casual but probably required significant styling effort. His clothes occupied that expensive middle ground between trying too hard and not trying at all. But it was his eyes that made Elena's threat assessment spike. They held the kind of awareness that came from seeing too much too young. "I don't know what you mean," Elena said, modulating her voice to project confusion rather than suspicion. She adjusted her backpack straps, using the movement to check the hidden pockets where she kept emergency supplies. The small tracking device her father had insisted she carry was missing from its designated compartment. Lucas pushed off from the wall with movements that seemed casual, but contained too much control, too much economy of motion. Athletes moved with confidence, but Lucas moved like someone who had been trained to move without attracting attention. Tyler Bennett isn't used to anyone standing up to him. Most people around here learned that lesson the hard way. You're either very brave or very foolish. He extended his hand in greeting, and Elena noticed details that didn't fit his carefully constructed image. calluses on his palms suggested extensive time at a shooting range. A faint scar across his knuckles looked like a defensive wound. His watch, while appearing to be a standard smartwatch, had modifications she recognized from intelligence community suppliers. "Lucas Kane," he said, maintaining the handshake for exactly the right duration, long enough to be friendly, not long enough to be suspicious. "I'm in your AP history class. You probably haven't noticed me." But Elena had noticed him. She had noticed how he always chose seats with clear sightlines to all exits, how he never sat with his back to a door, how his locker contained nothing personal, nothing that could be used to build a psychological profile. "I should get to class," Elena muttered, backing toward the building while maintaining visual contact. Lucas matched her movement, maintaining a respectful distance that somehow felt more calculated than considerate. "You have Mr. Henderson for AP Chemistry next, right? I can walk you there. The hallways can be complicated for new students." He said it like he already knew her complete schedule, like he had been preparing for this exact conversation. Eleanor felt the familiar prickle of surveillance, the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. She glanced at the windows overlooking the courtyard, catching movement behind at least 3 different panes of glass. "I can find it myself," she said, but Lucas was already moving toward the door, forcing her to either follow or create a scene that would draw more unwanted attention. The walk to chemistry took them through the main corridor, past the site of her confrontation with Tyler. Whispers followed in their wake, students stepping aside to let them pass while furiously texting updates to their social networks. Elena caught fragments of conversation, each iteration of the story growing more elaborate than the last. "Heard she's been expelled from 3 different schools for fighting. Tyler's dad is going to sue her family. Probably knows martial arts or something." Lucas seemed oblivious to the attention, maintaining a steady stream of seemingly innocent conversation about teachers, classes, and school traditions. But Elena noticed how he subtly steered her away from certain areas, how his pace quickened when they passed specific classrooms, how his eyes tracked particular students with more than casual interest. They reached Mr. Henderson's classroom with 3 minutes to spare before the bell. Lucas paused at the doorway, his expression shifting to something more serious. "A word of advice? Tyler doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. But he's not the only danger at Millbrook High. Some threats hide behind prettier faces." Before Eleanor could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the stream of students with the same unsettling ability he had demonstrated in the courtyard. Mr. Henderson's chemistry classroom smelled of sulfur and ambition. The teacher himself looked like he had been conducting the same experiments for so long that the chemicals had begun to alter his DNA. His wild gray hair defied gravity, and his lab coat bore stains from every periodic element that could leave a mark. "Miss Vasquez," he said without looking up from his preparation of what appeared to be a highly reactive compound. "I heard about your interaction with Mr. Bennett. Fascinating application of leverage and joint manipulation. The physics involved were quite elegant." Eleanor froze halfway to her assigned lab station. "I don't know what you—" "Please," Henderson interrupted, finally meeting her eyes. "I've been teaching here for 23 years. I've seen every variation of teenage conflict imaginable, but your particular technique, that was something special. Military, if I had to guess. Special forces based on the economy of movement." He returned to his experiment, adding drops of clear liquid to a beaker that immediately began smoking. "Your father must be very proud, or very worried. Probably both." The implications of his words sent ice through Eleanor's veins. How much did the faculty know about her background? How many people were watching her, cataloging her every move, waiting for her to reveal more than she intended? She took her seat at the lab station she shared with a quiet girl named Amy Chen, who looked at her with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Is it true?" Amy whispered. "Did you really take down Tyler Bennett?" Elena focused on arranging her notebook and materials. "It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that left him with bruised ribs and a bruised ego," Amy continued, her voice dropping even lower. "You should be careful. Tyler's family basically owns this town. His father's a judge, his uncle's the police chief, and his older brother runs some kind of security company that does government contracts." The last piece of information made Elena's pulse quicken. Government contracts could mean anything from building maintenance to intelligence operations. She made a mental note to research the Bennett family's business interests more thoroughly. The class proceeded with the standard first-day overview of safety procedures and curriculum expectations, but Elena found it impossible to concentrate. Every few minutes, she caught someone staring at her, quickly looking away when she met their gaze. Her phone vibrated with notification after notification, despite having no social media accounts and having given her number to no one at Millbrook High. She checked the screen under her desk, finding dozens of messages from unknown numbers. Some contained threats, others warnings, and a few offered cryptic words of support. One message stood out from the rest, sent from an encrypted messaging app that shouldn't have been able to find her number. "Your mother would be proud. A friend." The student council office occupied a corner suite on the 3rd floor, with windows overlooking both the main entrance and the athletic fields. It was a strategic position that Sophie Chen had specifically requested when she assumed the presidency in her junior year. Now, as a senior with unprecedented influence over Millbrook High's social ecosystem, she ruled her digital empire from behind a desk that cost more than most teachers' monthly salaries. Sophie's appearance was a masterwork of calculated perfection. Her black hair fell in sheets of silk that had been styled by professionals who usually worked with celebrities. Her makeup looked natural, but had taken 45 minutes to apply. Her clothes were designer brands, with the labels carefully removed because true wealth didn't need to advertise itself. "New submission," her assistant announced. Meredith Walsh was a sophomore who had earned her position by demonstrating both absolute loyalty and a flexible relationship with truth. She slid a tablet across the desk, its screen showing the latest confession submitted to Millbrook High's anonymous gossip platform. Sophie scanned the content with eyes that could process information like a supercomputer analyzing data streams. The confession claimed to have video evidence of Elena Vasquez using military combat techniques against Tyler Bennett. Attached was a low-quality video clearly filmed from a phone hidden at waist level. "Publish it," Sophie decided, her fingers already flying across her laptop keyboard to craft the perfect accompanying commentary. But edit out the audio, let people fill in their own narrative. The Millbrook High Secrets page had started as a simple blog where students could share anonymous confessions about crushes, academic struggles, and family problems. Under Sophie's management, it had evolved into a sophisticated intelligence network that tracked every social interaction, documented every relationship, and could destroy any reputation with a few well-placed posts. Her phone buzzed with a text from a contact saved only as "Handler." "The Vasquez girl is here. Monitor all submissions about her closely. Full documentation required." Sophie deleted the message immediately, a practice she had perfected over 3 years of receiving similar instructions. She had never met her handler in person, never learned their real name, but their payments had funded her lifestyle, and their protection had ensured her rise to social dominance. She opened a new browser tab, navigating through several proxy servers before accessing a secure cloud storage system. The folder labeled EV 2024 was already populated with surveillance photos, academic records, and psychological assessments. Someone had been preparing for Elena Vasquez's arrival long before the girl had enrolled at Millbrook High. Sophie created a new document, beginning what would become a comprehensive profile. Subject displays advanced tactical training, inconsistent with civilian background. Initial confrontation with TB resulted in successful defensive maneuver, suggesting muscle memory from extensive repetition. Recommend immediate social isolation protocol to prevent alliance formation. She scheduled a series of posts for release throughout the day, each one designed to plant seeds of suspicion about Elena's past. By lunch tomorrow, the entire school would be convinced that Elena Vasquez was dangerous, possibly violent, and definitely hiding something significant. Her fingers paused over the keyboard as she studied a photograph of Eleanor from her previous school. Something about the girl's eyes seemed familiar, triggering a memory Sophie couldn't quite access. She had seen that exact expression before, that combination of watchfulness and hidden knowledge. The revelation came suddenly. Sophie pulled up an archived yearbook from 10 years ago, digitized as part of a library preservation project. She scrolled through pages of senior portraits until she found what her subconscious had recognized. Rachel Martinez, class of 2014, had the same eyes, the same bone structure, the same slight tilt to her smile. Sophie's investigation intensified. She cross-referenced Rachel Martinez with news archives, finding a brief mention of a car accident from 7 years ago. The victim had been identified as Rachel Vasquez, survived by a husband and young daughter. The maiden name versus married name discrepancy was explained, but the coincidence of Elena appearing at the same school her mother had attended seemed impossibly unlikely, unless it wasn't a coincidence at all. Sophie's secure phone rang, displaying Principal Morrison's direct line. She answered with growing unease about the web she had helped weave. "My office," Morrison said. "Immediately, come alone and tell no one." The walk to the principal's office felt like crossing a minefield. Sophie maintained her perfect composure, smiling at underclassmen who scattered from her path, but her mind raced through possibilities. Had Morrison discovered her unauthorized research? Had her handler reported her deviation from instructions? Principal Morrison's office felt like a museum dedicated to institutional power. Diplomas from Ivy League universities covered one wall. Photographs with state senators and federal officials occupied another. Awards and commendations created a shrine to 3 decades of educational leadership. But Solomon Morrison himself looked like something harder than an educator, something that had been shaped by forces beyond school board politics. He stood at his window, hands clasped behind his back, in a posture that seemed military rather than academic. When he turned to face Sophie, his expression revealed nothing but careful calculation. "Sit," he commanded, and Sophie found herself obeying before consciously deciding to comply. Morrison moved to his desk, withdrawing a folder that he placed between them with deliberate precision. "You've been investigating the Vasquez family." It wasn't a question, so Sophie didn't answer. She had learned that silence often prompted more information than denial. "What you've discovered about Rachel Martinez is accurate but incomplete," Morrison continued. "She was a student here, yes, but she was also something more, something that made her dangerous to people with significant interests in maintaining the status quo." He opened the folder, revealing surveillance photographs that looked professionally shot. Rachel Martinez appeared in various locations around Millbrook, sometimes alone, sometimes with people whose faces had been redacted with black bars. Rachel was investigating a network that had operated in this town for generations, Morrison explained, his tone suggesting he was choosing each word carefully. She got too close to the truth. The car accident was deemed the most efficient solution. Sophie felt her worldview tilting off its axis. "You had her killed." Morrison's smile was thin and humorless. I had nothing to do with that decision. I was merely a vice principal then, following orders like everyone else, but her death created complications. She had already transmitted her findings to federal authorities. The investigation was delayed, but not destroyed. He pulled out another photograph, this one showing a young Eleanor at what appeared to be her mother's funeral. The daughter was deemed a potential future threat. We've been monitoring her ever since. Your work with the confession page has been instrumental in that surveillance. Sophie's hands clenched in her lap. You've been using me to spy on students for years. We've been using you to maintain order, Morrison corrected, to identify threats before they mature, to prevent situations that would require more permanent solutions. The implications hung between them like a loaded weapon. Sophie thought of all the students whose secrets she had exposed, whose lives she had destroyed with carefully crafted rumors. She had thought she was playing mean girl politics, but she had actually been conducting intelligence operations for something much darker. Elena Vasquez came here deliberately, Morrison continued. Her enrollment wasn't random. Someone wants to finish what her mother started. The question is whether we allow that to happen or whether we take preventive action. What kind of preventive action? Sophie asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Morrison's expression darkened. The kind that ensures she never discovers what really happened to her mother. The kind that protects the interests that keep this town prosperous and stable. He stood, moving back to the window. You have a choice to make, Miss Chen. Continue your valuable work and be rewarded accordingly, or develop a conscience and face the consequences. Your adoptive parents have done well by you. It would be unfortunate if they were to learn about certain irregularities in your adoption papers. The threat was subtle, but clear. Sophie had always wondered about the gaps in her early childhood memories, the way her adoptive parents deflected questions about her biological family. Now she understood that those gaps had been deliberately created, that her entire life had been constructed to serve someone else's agenda. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, hating the defeat in her voice. "Escalate the campaign against Elena Vasquez. Make her a pariah, push her until she breaks or leaves, and if she proves more resilient than expected." Morrison paused, considering his words. "Well, we have other resources at our disposal." Tyler Bennett's house sprawled across 3 acres of manicured perfection on Millbrook's most exclusive street. The colonial architecture suggested old money, but the security system belonged to a paranoid present. Cameras tracked every approach, motion sensors covered blind spots, and the fence that appeared decorative was actually electrified after dark. Inside his second-floor bedroom, Tyler stood before a wall of photographs that would have horrified anyone with basic human decency. Dozens of female students appeared in various states of undress, their images captured in locker rooms, bathrooms, and other spaces where they had expected privacy. Each photo was labeled with names, dates, and personal information that could destroy lives. Drake Morrison studied the collection with the detached interest of someone viewing inventory. "How many do we have on the Vasquez girl?" "None yet," Tyler admitted, his jaw clenching with frustration. "She's careful, never uses the main bathrooms, always changes in the individual stalls, covers her phone cameras with tape." "Paranoid," Drake observed. "Or trained," Tyler countered. He pulled up Elena's student file on his laptop, the one his father had obtained through channels that violated multiple privacy laws. "Look at her previous schools. 3 transfers in 2 years, always leaving just before the end of term. No social media presence, no digital footprint beyond basic enrollment records." Drake leaned closer to the screen. "You think she's running from something?" "Or hunting something," Tyler suggested. His hand unconsciously moved to his ribs, where Eleanor's defensive move had left bruises that still ached. No teenage girl learns those moves from YouTube videos. She's been trained by someone who knew what they were doing. The bedroom door opened without warning, revealing Tyler's younger brother Marcus. At 15, Marcus had inherited the Bennett bone structure, but none of the cruelty that ran in the family, like a genetic disease. He looked at the wall of photographs with barely concealed disgust. "Mom wants you downstairs for dinner," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. Tyler closed his laptop with deliberate slowness. "Tell her I'll be down in 5 minutes." Marcus didn't leave. Instead, he stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the photographs with increasing horror. "Is this what you've become? Is this what our family name means now?" "Our family name means power," Tyler responded, moving to block Marcus's view of the wall. "These photos are insurance, little brother. Everyone has secrets, and secrets are currency in the real world." "They're people," Marcus protested. "They trust you. They think you're their friend, their boyfriend, their teammate." Tyler's laugh held no humor. "They're stepping stones. Dad taught me that before he taught me to throw a football. Everyone uses everyone else. The only difference is that winners admit it." Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers moving toward the camera function. Tyler's hand shot out, gripping his brother's wrist with enough force to leave marks. "Don't even think about it," Tyler warned. "You're family, but that only protects you so far. Ask cousin Jessica what happens to family members who develop inconvenient moral standards." The reference to their cousin who had mysteriously moved to Seattle after threatening to expose their uncle's business practices wasn't subtle. Marcus yanked his arm free, backing toward the door. "You're going to destroy her, aren't you?" Marcus asked. "Elena Vasquez. She embarrassed you, so you're going to ruin her life." Tyler's smile was cold enough to frost windows. "I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect what's ours. If she's smart, she'll leave before things get complicated. If she's not..." He shrugged. "Well, Millbrook has a way of dealing with problems." Marcus fled the room, but not before Tyler saw him typing furiously on his phone. The younger Bennett brother had always been soft, but lately he'd been asking too many questions, showing too much interest in things that didn't concern him. Tyler made a mental note to have Drake monitor Marcus's communications. The confession went live at exactly 11:47 p.m. Sophie had timed it perfectly, knowing that late-night posts generated maximum engagement from insomniacs and anxiety-ridden students who scrolled through their feeds instead of sleeping. Within minutes, responses flooded in from anonymous accounts that Sophie tracked through sophisticated software that would have impressed NSA analysts. "Did anyone else notice the new girl isn't what she seems? Saw her do something weird to Tyler Bennett today? She's definitely hiding something major." The initial post was deliberately vague, allowing respondents to fill in details from their imagination and paranoia. Sophie monitored each comment, amplifying the most damaging speculation while deleting anything that might generate sympathy for Elena. "I heard she transferred from 3 different schools this year, probably got expelled for violence. My cousin goes to Westfield High. Says weird stuff happened right before she left. Someone saw her talking to herself behind the gym. Girl's got serious issues." None of it was true. Sophie manufactured each rumor with surgical precision, understanding exactly how teenage anxiety spread through social networks like a virus seeking hosts. She had learned that perception mattered more than reality, that a lie repeated often enough became indistinguishable from truth. Her secure laptop showed real-time analytics of the post's reach. 300 views in the first 5 minutes, 47 shares, 93 comments. The algorithmic amplification she had programmed into the site's code ensured that by morning, every student at Millbrook High would have seen the post at least once. But as Sophie watched the numbers climb, she found herself thinking about the photograph of Rachel Martinez. Eleanor's mother had attended this school, had walked these same halls, had perhaps sat in this very office when it belonged to a different student council president. What had she discovered that was worth killing her for? What truth was so dangerous that it required a decade of preparation to prevent her daughter from uncovering it? Sophie's fingers moved to her personal laptop, the one not connected to the school network or her handler's surveillance system. She began searching for information about deaths in Millbrook from 7 years ago. The car accident that killed Rachel Vasquez was reported in a brief police blotter note, but the details were strangely sparse. No witnesses, no other vehicles involved, no explanation for why an experienced driver would lose control on a clear night on a straight road. She expanded her search, looking for other unexplained deaths or disappearances in Millbrook over the past 2 decades. The pattern that emerged made her stomach turn. Every few years, someone who asked too many questions or challenged the wrong people would suffer an accident, commit suicide, or simply leave town without explanation. The authorities always ruled them isolated incidents, but Sophie's analytical mind saw the connections. Her secure phone buzzed, "Stop searching. Focus on your assignment." Sophie stared at the message, realizing that her handler was monitoring her personal devices as well. The scope of surveillance she had thought she controlled was actually controlling her. She was not a spider at the center of a web, but a fly who had been allowed to believe she was free. Elena found the confession during her midnight scroll through the school's digital ecosystem. She had created anonymous accounts to monitor the social dynamics, understanding that information warfare was as crucial as physical security. The post about her had already generated hundreds of interactions, each comment adding another layer to the narrative being constructed around her. She screenshot everything, building a database of user patterns and linguistic analysis that might reveal the post's true author. Certain phrases appeared repeatedly across supposedly different accounts, suggesting a single person managing multiple personas. The technical sophistication required for such an operation exceeded typical teenage cyberbullying. Her secure phone vibrated with an encrypted message from her father. "Surveillance detected. They know you're there. Maintain cover but prepare for escalation." Elena moved to her window, scanning the street below for vehicles that didn't belong. A van with tinted windows had been parked 3 houses down for the past 2 hours. A jogger had passed by 4 times despite the late hour, always slowing when he reached her house. The watchers weren't bothering to hide anymore. She activated the emergency protocols her father had drilled into her since childhood. Her go bag was already packed with cash, fake identification, and untraceable communication devices. Escape routes from the house had been mapped on her first night. Safe houses existed in 3 neighboring states, each stocked with supplies for extended stays. But running would mean abandoning the mission. Her mother had died trying to expose something in Millbrook, and Elena had spent 10 years preparing to finish that work. The confrontation with Tyler Bennett had been a mistake, but perhaps it had also been an opportunity. By revealing her capabilities, she had forced the enemy to reveal theirs. Her laptop chimed with a notification from an encrypted messaging app she hadn't installed. The message contained no text, only a set of GPS coordinates and a timestamp for tomorrow at noon. Elena recognized the location. The abandoned warehouse district on Millbrook's eastern edge, where urban decay provided perfect cover for clandestine meetings. She deleted the message and began preparing for what could be either a trap or the breakthrough she had been seeking. Either way, tomorrow would bring answers to questions that had haunted her family for a decade. Lucas Kane's apartment occupied the top floor of a building that appeared run down from the outside, but contained sophisticated technology within. His living room had been converted into a command center that would rival small intelligence agencies. Multiple monitors displayed feeds from throughout Millbrook, tracking movement patterns and communication networks with algorithmic precision. His handler appeared on the secure video link, face obscured by digital distortion. Report. Elena Vasquez has been successfully isolated, Lucas reported, pulling up social media analytics on his primary screen. The confession page strategy is working better than projected. Within 48 hours, she'll be completely friendless. And your assessment of her capabilities? Lucas hesitated, replaying the morning's confrontation in his mind. She's been trained by someone with special operations experience. The defensive technique she used on Tyler Bennett was textbook close-quarters combat, but modified for someone of her size and strength. I'd estimate at least 10 years of consistent training. Colonel Vasquez, the handler confirmed, former Delta Force, now working for an agency that officially doesn't exist. We've been tracking him since his wife's death. The mention of Rachel Vasquez's death sent an unexpected chill through Lucas. He had been briefed on the operation's history, but the casual way his handler discussed murder disturbed him more than he expected. "What's my next move?" Lucas asked, pushing aside his growing discomfort. "Get close to her. Become her only friend in a hostile environment. Learn what she knows about her mother's investigation, and if she gets too close to the truth." The handler paused. "Well, you know what needs to be done." The video link terminated, leaving Lucas alone with the weight of his assignment. He moved to his secondary workstation, where a different set of monitors showed surveillance footage from a private school in Vermont. His sister Anna appeared on screen, walking between classes with friends who had no idea their companion was leverage in a game she didn't know existed. The arrangement was simple. Lucas worked for the organization, and Anna received the best education money could buy, protected from the truth about their family's destruction. Their parents' death in what authorities called a murder-suicide had actually been an execution, punishment for their father's attempt to expose the same network Elena's mother had investigated. Lucas had been 14 when he was given the choice: cooperate or watch his sister disappear into the foster system, where the organization's reach would ensure she never experienced a moment of safety or happiness. The decision had been easy then. Now, watching Elena Vasquez fight the same battle his parents had lost, he wondered if he had chosen survival over honor. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "I know you're watching me. If you want to talk, really talk, meet me at the warehouse district tomorrow at noon. Come alone." Lucas stared at the message, realizing that Elena had somehow identified him as more than just another high school student. The game was evolving faster than anyone had anticipated, and he found himself caught between loyalty to his sister and a growing respect for Elena's courage. He began preparing for tomorrow's meeting, understanding that it would likely determine whether Elena Vasquez lived long enough to uncover the truth about her mother's death. The morning came wrapped in fog that turned Millbrook into a Gothic nightmare. Elena moved through her preparations with mechanical precision, checking equipment and reviewing contingency plans while her mind processed the previous day's revelations. The confession page had exploded overnight, with over 1,000 comments dissecting her every move since arriving at school. She selected her outfit carefully, clothes that appeared normal but allowed freedom of movement, shoes that could handle running or fighting, a jacket with hidden pockets for essential items. Her father had taught her that preparation determined survival more than skill or strength. The walk to school felt like entering enemy territory. Students who had previously ignored her now actively avoided her path, creating a bubble of isolation that followed her through the halls. Whispers cascaded in her wake, each repetition of yesterday's events growing more distorted and dramatic. Eleanor found her locker covered in printed screenshots from the confession page. Someone had taken the time to highlight the most vicious comments, ensuring she couldn't avoid reading attacks on her character, appearance, and right to exist in their space. She photographed everything before removing the papers, adding to her growing documentation of harassment. Rough morning? Sophie Chen materialized beside her, looking immaculate despite the early hour. Her expression suggested sympathy, but her eyes held calculation that reminded Elena of her father's warnings about false friends in hostile territory. "I've had better," Elena replied, closing her locker with deliberate calm. Sophie leaned against the adjacent locker, her posture suggesting casual conversation while actually blocking Elena's exit route. The confession page can be brutal. Anonymous platforms bring out the worst in people. "You would know," Elena said, watching Sophie's reaction carefully. "You run it, don't you?" Sophie's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. "That's a serious accusation. The whole point of anonymous platforms is that nobody knows who's behind them. Nobody except the person with administrator access, IP tracking software, and the technical knowledge to maintain operational security," Elena countered. "The linguistic patterns across multiple posts suggest a single author managing numerous accounts. The posting schedule aligns with your known free periods, and the sophisticated understanding of social dynamics points to someone with your particular skill set." For the first time since Elena had met her, Sophie appeared genuinely surprised. "You've been doing your homework." "My mother taught me to always understand the battlefield before engaging," Elena said, then caught herself. The mention of her mother had been unplanned, a crack in her carefully maintained cover. Sophie's expression shifted to something more complex than mere curiosity. "Your mother, Rachel Martinez, class of 2014. I found her yearbook photo. You have her eyes." The hallway suddenly felt too exposed, too public for this conversation. Elena glanced at the security cameras, wondering who might be watching this interaction and what they would make of it. "We should talk," Sophie said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "But not here. Not where they can monitor us." She slipped a piece of paper into Elena's hand, then walked away with the same confident stride that had carried her to the top of Millbrook High's social hierarchy. Elena waited until she was alone before examining the note. It contained an address and a time, different from the warehouse meeting, suggesting Sophie was operating independently from whoever had sent the encrypted message. First period brought a new form of harassment. Someone had informed all of Elena's teachers about the violent incident with Tyler Bennett, and each class began with pointed reminders about the school's zero-tolerance policy for fighting. The other students watched her with a mixture of fear and fascination, as if she might attack at any moment. During AP History, Lucas Kane took his usual seat with clear sightlines to all exits, but today he positioned himself where he could observe Elena without seeming obvious. Their eyes met once, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the door. A warning or a signal, Elena couldn't determine. The morning crawled toward noon, each class bringing new variations of isolation and hostility. Someone had drawn targets on her desk in permanent marker. Her lab partner in chemistry requested a reassignment. The lunch lady made a pointed comment about troublemakers while serving her food. At 11:45, Elena slipped out of study hall and made her way toward the warehouse district. She took a circuitous route, doubling back several times and using reflective surfaces to check for surveillance. The van from last night followed at a distance, making no effort to remain hidden. The warehouse district stood as a monument to Millbrook's industrial past and economically depressed present. Abandoned buildings created an urban maze where anything could happen without witnesses. Elena chose her approach carefully, noting potential ambush points and escape routes. Lucas was already there, standing in a shaft of sunlight that penetrated the broken roof. He had positioned himself perfectly, visible enough to show he wasn't hiding, but with cover within easy reach. His hands were empty, but never far from potential weapons. "You came," Elena said, maintaining distance while checking for others. You knew I would. Lucas's voice carried resignation rather than threat. Just like you know I'm not really a high school student. Neither am I, Elena admitted. We're both playing roles, hunting for truth in a place built on lies. Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in it. Truth. Do you know what truth costs in Millbrook? Ask your mother. Oh wait, you can't, because truth got her killed. The words hit like physical blows, but Elena had expected them. Tell me what happened to her. She discovered a network that's operated here for generations, Lucas began, his words careful and measured. Human trafficking disguised as modeling agencies, money laundering through school fundraisers, blackmail using compromising photos of minors. Your mother compiled evidence that would have destroyed dozens of prominent families. He moved closer, his voice dropping. But the network knew she was coming. Someone inside the federal investigation leaked her identity. The car accident was professionally staged. Brake lines cut just enough to fail at the right moment, on the right curve, at the right speed. Elena felt grief and rage warring in her chest, but she forced herself to remain focused. Who gave the order? That's the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Lucas pulled out a flash drive, holding it where she could see it. This contains partial records from the night your mother died. Phone calls, text messages, financial transfers. Not enough to prosecute, but enough to point you in the right direction. What's your price? Elena asked, knowing nothing came free in this world. Lucas's expression hardened. My sister's safety. They have her at a private school, surrounded by security that's supposedly for her protection, but is really to ensure my cooperation. Get her free, and I'll help you burn this entire network to the ground. Elena considered the offer, weighing risks against rewards. Lucas could be lying, leading her into a trap, but the pain in his eyes when he mentioned his sister seemed genuine, and she needed allies if she hoped to succeed where her mother had failed. I'll need proof, she said, about your sister, about the network, about everything. Lucas nodded, pulling out his phone. I've been documenting everything for 3 years, hoping someone like you would come along. Someone with the skills and motivation to finish what your mother started. He showed her files that made her stomach turn, photographs from Tyler Bennett's collection, financial records showing millions in illegal transactions, correspondence between town officials coordinating criminal activities. The scope exceeded anything Elena had imagined. This involves half the town's power structure, she breathed. More than half, Lucas corrected. The police chief, the mayor, the school board, the largest employers, they're all connected. That's why local law enforcement never finds anything. That's why federal investigations get stonewalled. That's why people who ask questions have accidents. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Car engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Lucas grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her toward a concealed exit he had obviously prepared in advance. They know we're here, he said urgently. Someone's been tracking us. They ran through the warehouse, their footsteps echoing off rusted machinery and broken concrete. Behind them, doors burst open and voices shouted commands. Elena recognized tactical movement patterns. This wasn't local police, but something more sophisticated. Lucas led her through a maze of passages he had clearly memorized, finally emerging into a drainage tunnel that ran beneath the district. They splashed through ankle-deep water, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. My car's 2 blocks north, Lucas gasped, pulling her up a maintenance ladder. They emerged in an alley behind a strip mall, both soaked and breathing hard. Lucas's car, an unremarkable sedan with fake plates, waited where he had positioned it. They drove in silence for several minutes, both checking mirrors for pursuit. They'll know we were together, Elena finally said. Our covers are blown. Then we better make it count, Lucas replied. The flash drive has an encrypted partition with names, dates, and locations. Your father will know how to decode it, Tell him it uses the same cipher the military employed in Operation Sandstone. Elena looked at him sharply. How do you know about my father's operations? Because my parents were part of the same task force, Lucas admitted, before the network had them killed and made it look like a murder-suicide. I was 14, Anna was 6. They gave me a choice, work for them or watch my sister disappear. The revelation reframed everything Eleanor thought she knew about Lucas Kane. They weren't just allies of convenience, they were connected by a shared tragedy that went back years. Drop me at the public library, Elena instructed. I need to upload these files to secure servers before they find us again. What about the meeting with Sophie Chen? Lucas asked, revealing he knew more about Eleanor's plans than she had expected. That's tonight, and yes, I know it's probably a trap, but Sophie knows things about my mother, about the network. She might be the key to understanding how deep this goes. Lucas pulled into the library parking lot, scanning for threats before letting her exit. Be careful. Sophie Chen isn't just some mean girl with a gossip blog. She's been groomed for years to be the network's information broker. She knows everyone's secrets because she's been trained to collect them. Elena pocketed the flash drive, her mind already planning the next moves. Then maybe it's time someone collected hers. The Millbrook Public Library stood as one of the few places in town not under complete surveillance. Budget cuts had prevented the installation of modern security systems, making it a blind spot in the network's otherwise comprehensive monitoring. Elena chose a computer terminal in the back corner, positioning herself to watch all approaches while she worked. The flash drive's contents exceeded her worst expectations. Financial records showed millions flowing through seemingly legitimate businesses. Photographs documented years of exploitation. Communications revealed a web of corruption that touched every aspect of Millbrook life. But it was the file labeled Rachel Martinez, Final Report, that stopped her breathing. Her mother's last investigation notes, uploaded to a secure server hours before her death. The writing was clinical, professional, but Elena could feel her mother's determination in every word. The network, calling itself The Order, has operated in Millbrook since 1987. Originally focused on financial crimes, it expanded into human trafficking after establishing control over local law enforcement. Current leadership includes Judge William Bennett, Principal Solomon Morrison, Police Chief David Chen, and an unknown figure referred to only as the Architect. Elena memorized every detail, understanding that this information had cost her mother's life. The report included photographs, bank records, and testimony from victims who had somehow escaped. It was enough to destroy the order, but only if it reached authorities who weren't already compromised. She initiated upload protocols her father had taught her, sending encrypted copies to servers in 3 different countries. Each upload used different routing, making it nearly impossible to intercept all copies. The process would take hours, but once complete, the evidence would be beyond the order's reach. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. Change of plans. Meet me at the school pool after closing. Come alone and tell no one. The school pool after hours meant isolation, limited exits, and numerous places for ambush. Everything about it screamed trap, but Elena recognized she was running out of options. The order knew she was investigating them. Her only advantage was that they might underestimate how much she already knew. She spent the remaining afternoon creating contingencies, dead man switches that would release everything if she didn't check in every 12 hours. Messages to her father with enough information to continue if she disappeared. Backups of backups, because her mother's death had taught her that no amount of paranoia was excessive when facing enemies with unlimited resources. As darkness fell over Millbrook, Elena made her way back to the high school. The building looked different at night, its windows black and empty like dead eyes. She entered through a maintenance door she had identified during her reconnaissance, avoiding the main entrances that certainly had cameras. The pool area was exactly as threatening as she had expected. Emergency lighting cast green shadows across the water. The chlorine smell was overwhelming, masking any other sense that might provide warning. The acoustic tiles would muffle sounds, preventing anyone outside from hearing screams. Sophie stood at the far end of the pool, her silhouette reflected in the still water. She had changed from her school clothes into something more practical: dark colors, flexible fabric, shoes suitable for running or fighting. "You came," Sophie said, her voice echoing off the walls. "You knew I would," Elena replied, consciously echoing Lucas's words from earlier. Sophie laughed, but it sounded forced. "We're both predictable in our own ways. You had to come because you need answers. I had to invite you because—" She paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Because I need to know if I'm the monster they made me, or if there's still something human left." Elena moved closer but maintained distance from the pool's edge. Too easy to be pushed in, too hard to escape from water. "You're Principal Morrison's daughter." "Adopted daughter," Sophie corrected. "My real parents were federal agents. They came to Millbrook investigating the order. Morrison had them killed and took me as a trophy, raising me to be his perfect weapon." The revelation explained so much: Sophie's technical skills, her emotional detachment, her ability to destroy lives without apparent remorse. She had been shaped from childhood to serve the Order's agenda. "But you're having doubts," Elena observed. Sophie's composure cracked slightly. "Your mother's photograph triggered something. Memories I thought were dreams. I was 7 when my parents died, old enough to remember fragments. Morrison told me they abandoned me, but I remember gunshots. I remember screaming. I remember my mother telling me to hide." She pulled out a tablet, showing Elena years of collected data. "I've been documenting everything, every confession, every secret, every crime the Order has committed using my platform. I told myself I was building leverage, but really I was gathering evidence. Part of me always knew this day would come." "Why should I trust you?" Elena asked. "This could all be an elaborate trap." "Because in 30 seconds, Tyler Bennett and his crew are going to come through that door," Sophie said, pointing to the main entrance. "Morrison sent them to eliminate you and frame it as a hazing incident gone wrong. But I changed their instructions, sending them to the wrong location. We have maybe 10 minutes before they realize the deception." As if on cue, Eleanor heard voices in the hallway, multiple people moving with purpose. Sophie grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a service corridor she hadn't noticed. "This way. I've been mapping escape routes since freshman year." They ran through maintenance passages, Sophie navigating with practiced ease. Behind them, doors slammed open, and Tyler's voice roared profanity that echoed through the empty school. The hunt was on, but Sophie's knowledge of the building gave them an advantage. They emerged in the automotive shop, where Sophie had pre-positioned supplies, backpacks with cash, electronics, and fake identification. "I've been planning my escape for 3 years," she explained. "Never had the courage to run alone." "You're not alone now," Elena said, making a decision that would have horrified her father. Trusting Sophie Chen went against every protocol, but sometimes survival required taking calculated risks. They slipped out through the loading dock as Tyler's crew searched the pool area. Sophie had disabled the security cameras along their route, creating a blind corridor through the Order's surveillance network. Her car, a bland model chosen for its invisibility, waited in a spot concealed from main roads. As they drove away from Millbrook High, Sophie handed Elena a drive different from the one Lucas had provided. "Everything I've collected in 4 years. Financial records, blackmail material, recorded conversations. Morrison thought he was training me to be his successor. Instead, he was teaching me to be his destroyer." "Where do we go now?" Eleanor asked, though she already knew the answer. "To the one person in Millbrook who still has clean hands," Sophie replied. Detective Sarah Walsh. She's been building a case against the Order for 5 years, but she needed someone on the inside. Tonight, she gets 2. Detective Sarah Walsh lived in a modest house on Millbrook's middle-class east side, far from the manicured lawns and security systems of the wealthy districts. Her unmarked car in the driveway and the subtle security measures around the property confirmed she took precautions seriously. She answered the door, holding a service weapon, her expression shifting from suspicion to recognition as she saw Sophie. "You're early. I expected you to crack next year." Elena Vasquez accelerated the timeline, Sophie explained, gesturing to her companion. Walsh's eyes widened. "Rachel's daughter. You look just like her." She stepped aside, weapon still ready but no longer aimed. "Inside, quickly. They'll have tracked your car by now." The interior was organized chaos, boxes of evidence, walls covered in connection charts, computers running analysis programs. It looked like the command center for a one-woman war against corruption. "Your mother was my training officer," Walsh told Elena, securing the door with multiple locks. "She taught me everything about investigation, then died before we could finish the order together. I've been continuing her work, but I needed someone inside their organization." She turned to Sophie. "Your handler doesn't know you've been feeding me information for 2 years. Every confession you documented, every secret you collected, I have copies. We're almost ready to move, but we need one more piece." "The architect," Elena said, understanding immediately. "The shadow leader my mother mentioned in her final report." Walsh nodded grimly. "Morrison, Bennett, Chen, they're all lieutenants. The architect coordinates everything, but their identity has been hidden for decades. Without them, the others will claim they were coerced, that the real leader escaped justice." Sophie pulled up files on her tablet. "I've been tracking communication patterns, looking for the hidden node in their network. Every major decision gets routed through an anonymized account that uses military-grade encryption." "My father might be able to crack it," Eleanor offered, already composing the message in her head. Walsh's expression turned serious. "Your father is 30 minutes out with a full tactical team. I contacted him the moment you entered Millbrook. This was always bigger than just you finding answers about your mother." Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. This was planned. My enrollment, the confrontation with Tyler, everything. "Not planned, but anticipated," Walsh corrected. "We knew the Order would eventually make a mistake, show their hand. Your presence was the catalyst we needed. Your mother would be proud. You did exactly what she would have done." Before Elena could respond, her phone erupted with alerts. The uploads from the library had completed, but something else was happening. The confession page had gone live with a massive data dump, thousands of documents, photographs, and recordings flooding the internet simultaneously. Sophie stared at her tablet in shock. "I didn't do this. Someone else has administrator access." A new message appeared on the screen. "The truth will set us all free. The architect." The 3 women exchanged glances, realizing that the game had just changed dramatically. The architect wasn't protecting the Order. They were destroying it from within.